In Chile, the television coverage of the campaign to the historical plebiscite on a new constitution has begun. The high-level general debate of the 75th session of the United Nations General Assembly continues this Friday under the theme "The Future We Want, the United Nations We Need." Guniea-Bissau celebrates 47 years of independence from Portugal, from which military parade. And spreading of the campaign in favor and against the modification of the Constitution. This will be the most important vote since the return to democracy in 1990, because it opens for the first time the possibility of making deep changes in the political and economic model of Chile, in order to respond to the claims for a more equal society that emerged after the social protest in 2019. Cuban Deputy Prime Minister Ricardo Cabrizas and Deputy Chairman of the Russian government, Yuri Borisov, attended a meeting of the Intergovernmental Commission for Economic, Commercial and Scientific Technical Collaboration between both countries on Friday. In September 2019, the 7th plenary session of the Intergovernmental Commission met in Moscow, where several documents were signed, among them the modernization of the Cuban energy system. At the time, Cabrizas spoke out for a strengthened collaboration with Russia in the health sphere and offered the island's experience in the pharmaceutical and biotechnological area. In front of the representatives of Russia, Belarus, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan and Armenia, the Cuban leader ratified the political will to open up greater opportunities for trade, investment and cooperation. The commitment of nations to defuse the COVID-19 crisis was ratified at the 20th meeting of Foreign Affairs Ministers of the Community of Latin America and the Caribbean states. Cuba's Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez highlighted that given the forecast of the effects of the pandemic, it is urgent to strengthen multilateralism. Rodriguez confirmed his country's support to Mexico to revitalize the integration mechanism and resume regional political agreements. Meanwhile, Nicaragua's representative Paul Herbert applauded Mexico and Argentina initiative for the production and distribution of the vaccine against COVID-19, so as not to leave anyone behind. Mexico's Secretary of Foreign Affairs Marcelo Ebrard heads 20th meeting of Foreign Affairs Ministers, which is held virtually and within the framework of the 75th period of sessions of the United Nations General Assembly, in his capacity as President pro tempore for the community during 2020. Sales details are adjusted in this new modality imposed by COVID-19. When he resumed the results of the fair, he commented that over 27,000 business appointments were made and over 4,000 attended virtual conferences at the open ceremony. Tarruco Marquez stressed that the digital tourism fair is here to stay, as the event is expected to continue, born with the purpose of promoting the tourism sector hit by the COVID-19 pandemic. And protesters in Louisville marched for the second straight night following the announcement that no one will be charged with the killing of Breonna Taylor. Demonstrations erupted in other cities around the United States on Wednesday after a grand jury decided not to directly charge anyone in connection with the killing of Taylor, a 26-year-old black woman who was shot dead in her apartment by police earlier this year. Local authorities announced that a 9 p.m. to 6:30 a.m. curfew would remain in place on Thursday and Friday. In Seattle, Washington, as part of the nationwide protests that are taking place in response to the lack of charges against officers involved in Breonna Taylor's death, thousands of people took to the streets to demand justice and safety for all. Protesters clashed with police in riot gear and set fires to garbage tanks. The Venezuelan armed forces are carrying out military exercises to defend the country against the threats from the United States and its allies, such as Brazil and Colombia, when the parliamentary elections approach. The Bolivian Armed Forces Strategic Operational Command Remigio Ceballos that the events that occurred in Apure, a border state with Colombia, where 4 Venezuelan privates died, were part of an attack that was contained by the Venezuelan government. Our correspondent Madeline Garcia has the story in a couple minutes. And right now we are taking a very short break, so don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. This Friday, during the 10th plenary meeting of the 75th UN General Assembly, His Holiness Pope Francis said that the current health crisis calls on us to choose what really matters and opens two paths for humanity.
The pandemic indeed calls upon us to take this testing time as a time for choosing, the time to choose between what really counts, what really matters, and what doesn't matter so much, to separate what is necessary from what is unnecessary. We are therefore facing the choice between two different paths. One leads to enhancing multilateralism, the expression of renewed global shared responsibility and solidarity based on justice and achieving peace and unity for the human family, which is God's project for the world. The other option gives priority to self-sufficiency, to nationalism, protectionism, individualism, and isolation. This option excludes the poorest, the most vulnerable.
His Holiness Pope Francis also stated that fundamental rights continue to be violated with impunity and that the dangers of the current arms race.
Indeed, it is painful to see how many fundamental rights continue to be violated with impunity. There's a very long list of such violations. This brings up the terrible image of humanity that has been wounded and deprived of dignity and freedom and the possibility of development. In this image, religious believers also continue to suffer from all kinds of persecution, including even genocide as a result of their beliefs. We must wonder whether the main threats to peace and security, such as poverty, epidemics, terrorism, and so on and so forth, can be addressed effectively when the arms race technology, such as, for instance, lethal autonomous weapons systems. I also reiterate the importance of reducing international sanctions as they make it harder for states to provide appropriate support to their peoples.
This Friday, speaking at the 10th plenary meeting of the 75th UN General Assembly, the President of the State of Palestine, Mahmoud Abbas, denounced the hardship that the Palestinian people suffer under the oppression of Israel, while the world watches and does nothing.
What more could I say about the suffering of my people? The misery they experience every day while the world stands by watching, and their long overdue legitimate aspirations to live in freedom, independence, and dignity, just like the rest of the world. How long do we have to wait until there is a just solution to the Palestinian question, a solution guaranteed by international law? How long will the Palestinian people continue to languish under the yoke of Israeli occupation? How long do we have to wait until there is a just solution to the status of millions of Palestinian refugees, in line with the relevant UN resolutions adopted 70 years ago?
The Venezuelan armed forces are carrying out military exercises to defend the country against threats from the United States and its allies, such as Brazil and Colombia, when the parliamentary elections approach. The Bolivian Armed Forces Strategic Operational Commandant Remigio Ceballos that the events had occurred in Apure, a border state with Colombia, where 4 Venezuelan privates died, were part of an attack that was contained by the Venezuelan government. Our correspondent Madeleine Garcia has the story.
This is how the war sounds. But Venezuela prepares to defend peace, a peace that has been threatened again and again by the United States. During the last year, these military exercises have been perfected, especially now. The army is preparing to tackle possible attacks on the border with Brazil and Colombia, but also to preserve peace and stability during the parliamentary elections on December 6.
Parallelly to all this being done here, there is a great deployment and work to guarantee elections in accordance with the electoral process law.
Venezuela is innovating in the defense strategy. The 8 strategic regions were reinforced to have complete units that will be able to act together in case of any attack. Combined with the infantry and other groups.
In this synchronization, the optimization of the movements in these exercises is searched for an action in such a way that people synchronize and increase the preparation levels, and that we are willing at any time to give an answer in any battle-required area national territory.
In a synchronized way, they tackled an irregular group attack last Saturday. According to intelligence reports, it was the first one followed by another action from Colombia. It is not a coincidence that the event that left 4 military soldiers dead in Venezuela and at least 15 of the mercenaries happened on the same day that the U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo's tour concluded, when he visited 4 countries that share borders with Venezuela, Colombia among them.
Todo estaba hilado, concatenado, por supuesto.
Everything was threaded. We know that the Colombian government tries a false positive to say that we do not fight against the groups. Of course it was planned now, but we have a potential and innocent law of intelligence, and we go ahead and break those plans.
President Nicolás Maduro denounced those plans and said that Donald Trump's administration orchestrated them when the U.S. presidential election is less than 2 months away.
What is new today is not that the DEA is involved up to the teque-teques with the Colombian drug trafficking groups to attack Venezuela. What is new is that it has been approved for the CIA to be involved in covert operations with a Venezuelan character green light to the CIA to come with direct agents to cover operations, terrorists against oil, electrical, military, electoral and other dirty covert actions like those that the CIA used for 60 years or more in the world.
A Strategic Operational Command warned that the United States Army is practicing to launch intercontinental missiles against Venezuela, and they're testing these in the Pacific and in the Caribbean. Meanwhile, the Venezuelan armed forces are deployed throughout the territory.
Thank you, Madeleine. And we have more stories coming up after this final short break, so don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. Guinea-Bissau celebrates 47 years of independence from Portugal with a military parade and a speech by the President Umuro Sissoko Embalo. The President says the celebration takes place in a unique and different context of our life, referring to the COVID-19 pandemic.
The commemoration of the 47th anniversary of our national independence takes place in a unique and defiant context of our life. Hence, the risk of contamination of the new coronavirus requires us to adopt urgent, harmonized and favorable measures which can strengthen our conscious response capacity to the COVID-19 pandemic. I count on each of you without excluding anyone and without distinction of origin, gender, ethnicity, religious belief or parentage, because we are a concrete generation. We are all brothers.
India continues to report new COVID-19 contagions and is getting closer to 6 million cases of COVID-19. The ongoing pandemic has infected at least 5 million inhabitants in this country, including over 91,000 deaths. However, at least 4 million patients recovered from the disease in India, where the recovery rate increased to 81%, according to the statistics from the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. According to the Indian Council of Medical Research, the country has done more than 67 million lab tests to detect the presence of the novel coronavirus. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un issued a rare apology Friday over what he described as the unexpected and disgraceful killing of a South Korean at sea, Seoul's presidential office has said. Apologies from the North, let alone attributed to Kim personally, are extremely unusual, and the message comes with inter-Korean ties in deep freeze, as well as a standoff in nuclear negotiations between Pyongyang and Washington. Analysts said the North was looking to placate its neighbor after the shooting, the first time its forces killed a southern citizen for a decade. Provoked outrage in the South. The fisheries official was shot dead on Tuesday by North Korean soldiers, and Seoul says his body was set on fire while still in water, apparently as a precaution against coronavirus infection. The Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson also denounced as pure slander Pompeo's accusation against
consular regulations. Their contacts with all walks of life in the United States are normal and above board, and there is nothing to blame. In contrast, some of the U.S. consular agencies and personnel are full of misdeeds. We advise the U.S. side to stop slandering China's diplomatic and consular missions and their personnel in the United States immediately, not to make groundless accusations and stir up troubles. Earnestly fulfill its obligations under international law and the provision of Sino-U.S. consular treaties so as to facilitate the normal performance of Chinese institutions and personnel. China will make necessary response according to the development of the situation.
On Friday, the Chinese government said the average number of mosques per Muslim person in Xinjiang is higher than it is in some Muslim countries, after an Australian think tank reported that Chinese authorities had demolished thousands of mosques in Xinjiang.
This Australian research institute received funding from foreign powers and has long engaged in the fabrication of anti-China reports and anti-China lies. It has also faced suspicion on many fronts and has no academic credibility to speak of. Xinjiang has approximately 24,000 mosques. On average, there is one mosque for every 530 Muslims. In Xinjiang's total number of mosques is more than 10 times the number in the US, and the average number of mosques per Muslim person is higher than in some Muslim countries.
A Javi Martinez header in extra time hands the Champions League winners Bayern Munich a 2-1 victory over Sevilla in the UEFA Super Cup in Budapest. Veteran midfielder Javi Martinez admitted it was a dream to be able to write more UEFA Super Cup history for Bayern Munich on Thursday, as his header in extra time sealed a 2-1 winner over Sevilla in Budapest. After also sweeping the Bundesliga German Cup and Champions League trophies, Bayern can win a 5th title this year when they host Borussia Dortmund in Munich for the German Super Cup on Wednesday. Rio de Janeiro's world-famous carnival parades became the latest casualty of the coronavirus pandemic, as officials announced they were indefinitely postponed to the February 2021 edition, with Brazil still reeling from COVID-19. The event draws millions of tourists from around Brazil and the world to the beachside city each year. And with the last year's edition images, we finish this news brief. Remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. Join us on social media. For TeleSUR English, I'm Laura Palmeiro. Thank you for watching.